AMD blew everyone away when they revealed not a Zen 4 prototype with 3D stacking technology, but a Zen 3 prototype with 3D stacking technology this year at Computex. And after the initial hype washed away of, oh my god, I can't believe they actually just showed that out of nowhere, well, reality set in. That night I put out a statement saying, hey, she said it's not going into production until Q4 at the soonest. That means no products for you, if it even does come to consumers, until 2022. And almost immediately after that, Ian Cutress put out a statement after talking directly to AMD that, yes, excitingly, this will come to consumers, but that it's not coming till 2022. And so at this point, I think the general status quo, the assumption by most people, is that AMD will have some sort of XT refresh. We've already confirmed that Zen 3 Plus Warhol has been canceled, but that's it. And there will probably just be a special edition of 3D chips to keep the gaming benchmarks, keep AMD at the top of those charts. But you're just going to have to wait till Zen 4 late next year. At this point, though, I'm not sure that's entirely true. Or at least, I don't know, maybe it is, but I hope not, because I am actually starting to get the opinion that AMD may want to do a full 6000 series refresh at the end of this year, and they may want to launch the strongest Zen 4 lineup they possibly can late next year. Recently on Twitter, I directly hinted that I had a lot more Intel info coming, and that is what this video is about. Alder Lake everything, release dates, core configs, and even its follow-up, Raptor Lake, that I think may challenge Zen 4 Raphael far better than a lot of people are expecting. At first, some of the info I go through won't be entirely new, but no, it's not just me summarizing what other people have said already. I leaked the majority of Alder Lake information first a year ago, and there were leaks before that early in the year, and Golden Cove info almost 2 years ago. I bring that up not to brag, I swear to God. I'm bringing it up because, well, there are some tech websites that for some reason insist on doing Alder Lake info roundups and just don't put my info there. So I'm bringing it up to say that it is coming from what I've been tracking for 2 years. Alder Lake has been a major saga for me. When it comes out, it will be a milestone, something I've been following closely, and I believe first for a very long time. But let's stop wasting time. I want to get into what Alder Lake is, what Raptor Lake is, and why people may really want to buckle up for a fun 2022 and onwards. But first, an ad from a sponsor. Where are you? Oh. Reese. There you are. As you could see, Reese here is not very good at finding privacy, but you don't have to be like her, because today's video is sponsored by a secure VPN, Private Internet Access, a provider with over 30 million downloads around the world. Millions choose this company, Private Internet Access, for hiding IP addresses and accessing geo-restricted content from websites, including YouTube, because it is incredibly easy to use with the following features. It has proven no logs policy, over 20,000 VPN servers in 70 plus countries. It is available for all operating systems with native apps for Windows, Mac, iOS, Android, Linux, and even Amazon Fire Stick. And it supports multiple payment options, including Bitcoin. You can understand why this is PC Mag's editor's choice for a VPN. And all of this, unlike a lot of VPNs, is backed up by 24/7 live customer service. And in fact, the deal gets even better. If you use the link in the description or on screen, you can get 2 years plus 3 months free for only $2.59 a month with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Make sure you use the link in the description or on screen so they know Moore's Law is dead sent you. All of this really does help the channel. Use Private Internet Access today. All right, Intel Alder Lake. And note that I now have put a key in the lower right-hand corner. I should have done this a very long time ago. I have been color coding my leaks for a while now, but now it's there just for when people share the slide. Nothing on these slides is guessing or speculation. Even in white, I'm mostly confident in it, above 50%. But there are some things I'm nearly 100% true of, if not literally 100% sure. Like literally multiple sources have never been wrong saying the same thing, sure. That's how sure it is if it's in the darker text. But yeah, well, let's get into it. Before we get into the core configs, something needs to be hammered home. Alder Lake is just one step forward into Intel's future of hybrid architectures. One step, the beginning. It needs to be emphasized that Intel plans to combine multiple core architectures in their upcoming lakes for the foreseeable future. This is not an experiment. If you proclaim Alder Lake will fail because Big Little can't work in x86, then you are practically asserting that Intel is going to go out of business. And I wish people would get that through their skulls. When you say that, you are saying Intel's done for, because this is all they are planning to do for their upcoming architecture for years. If Alder Lake has scheduling problems and a rocky launch, and I can't promise you it won't, then this will just be a baptism of fire while Intel races to make it work perfectly. They are married to Big Little. If you say it won't work, you're saying Intel's done for, because this is what they're betting the house on. Big Little is Intel's future. And Lakefield was specifically built for Microsoft to get the ball rolling on scheduling upgrades over a year before Alder Lake's launching. Guys, Intel has been working directly with Microsoft closely to prepare Windows for Big Little for Alder Lake. It's not like they're just going in blind. And finally, as I already confirmed on Twitter, an upcoming edition of Windows, and again, I'm not confirming it's going to be called Windows 11 or anything, I just know that's a catchy thing to refer to it as, is scheduled to launch this fall, right before Alder Lake, with deep scheduling upgrades, before it launches. Basically, Intel's whipping Microsoft to make sure it's ready before they launch these products. I don't think they'll launch them until it's at least working decently well. Okay, now let's summarize the general performance of Alder Lake before we get into the core configurations. Intel is telling its partners that Alder Lake doubles performance. Some products, obviously not all, not the gaming-focused ones, I'd assume. Some products, though, will double multi-threading performance at the same or even lower power than their predecessors. I would expect basically some mobile chips to come out that double Tiger Lake, even Tiger Lake H, and use less energy. Additionally, Golden Cove is the core architecture for the big cores. It brings a 20% increase in single-threaded performance over Tiger Lake. Expect them to show, around 20%, but then in some slides say up to 20% IPC. Just think of it as single-core performance is 20% better than Tiger Lake. And the Gracemont, that is the architecture, the core architecture for the little cores. Think of these in performance like low-clocked Skylake cores, around Skylake IPC, but at lower clocks and no hyperthreading. However, you can fit 4 little cores in the same die space of one big core. So if it's a very well-threaded app, Intel sees this as a more efficient way of scaling performance per die space, and of course then performance per watt. And finally, of course, we all know LGA 1700 is the socket, and it is planned to last multiple generations, including Raptor Lake, and PCIe 5.0 is supported on the PCIe slots, but as I confirmed a very long time ago, not for the M.2 devices. And DDR5 and DDR4 support. Now, as of now, the core configs are as follows. S1 for desktop and a specialty mobile product. 8 Golden Cove plus 8 Gracemont. So that's 24 threads total. S2, 6 Golden Cove, no Gracemont. This is a monolithic design for no small cores. P1 for mobile, though, is 6 Golden plus 8 Gracemont. Top of the line. The more it becomes about efficiency, the more they're leaning on using the little cores. P2 for mobile, only 2 Golden Cove and 8 Gracemont cores. And then there is an M for low power mobile. This is like the P2 die, but it only has LPDDR5, not DDR5, and LPDDR4X, and still just PCIe 4.0. Basically, this is meant to be a smaller package design that allows them to use less energy. All right, then. Let us move on to the Alder Lake release schedule. This is what a lot of you are probably waiting for. I'm going to go through what the i9s, i7s, and i5s are. Alder Lake SK series currently plans to have the embargo removed on October 25th, 2021 to launch the first S1 chips. This is the desktop 125 watt K series, your top i9, top i7, and top i5. And as far as I can tell, this might be all they have for this year. And right now, it is either because they're still building up stock for everything else, or as some sources have suggested, they just want full volume for a few flagship SKUs before they roll everything else out. And these will come with branded as UHD 32 execution unit Z graphics, basically the same thing as what's in Tiger Lake H 8 cores. And of course, DDR5, PCIe 5.0 support. The i9 is 8 plus 8. Anyone could have guessed that, though. The i7 is 8 plus 4, 8 big cores, 4 little cores, so that's 20 threads total. And then the i5, according to one of my best sources, is actually 6 plus 4 cores. So still just 6 big cores, which is all you really need for gaming at the moment, but then 4 little cores for when games need more threads or you're doing more multi-threaded workloads. And this is where it gets interesting, though. Following the K series, Alder Lake S with the non-K series launches, and of course, i9, i7 not unlocked, 8 plus 8 and 8 plus 4 chips, nothing big there. But supposedly the i5 non-K parts will have no little cores. Now, at first, this was a curious thing to me, but then I thought about it. If that top i9 is $500 to $600, which it should be, and that top i7 is $400 to like $450, then, well, I don't know, 6 plus 4 would absolutely, in my opinion, assuming what we know about IPC remains true, that would blow away the 5600X, the 5600 XT in multi-threading. You don't really need the entire i5 line to have that good of multi-threading performance. And so I think that's kind of what this is about. Giving an i5K SKU that's probably going to be about $350, that extra multi-threading grunt to beat the 5600X and maybe a 5600 XT and compete with a 5700X if that ever comes out, or whatever 8-core AMD drops at a lower price range. And then, from the 200 to 300 and, the below 200 mark, just 6-core i5. But remember, it has much higher IPC than what you get in Rocket Lake right now. And at least based on what I'm told, the i3 is still possibly just 4 big cores. Now, this is a surprise to me. It only comes from one source, 100% confirmed. So I'm leaving it as confident because I trust this source, but I still find it a bit odd they wouldn't give the i3 6 cores without hyperthreading or something at this point. But, what do I know? I mean, it does have higher IPC, and if it's going to be like $120, probably good enough. Anyways, Alder Lake P is currently planned to be announced after CES as the mobile lineup. These will be the 12 to 45 watt UNH chips with DDR5 and PCIe 5.0 support on mobile, and these will get 96 EU graphics with Z branding, not UHD. And of course, the higher power H chips are planned to mostly, if not be based on that top die, the P1, the 6 plus 8, and the U die, your 15 watt and below class, the 2 plus 8. And Alder Lake M will then follow after that with, of course, your 7 to 12 watt segment, sort of your Van Gogh competitors that has 2 plus 8, although I have heard there could be a 1 plus 8 configuration, just one big core. Again, Intel's betting on the little cores being good. And smaller packaging, as I've already said. Finally, Alder Lake HX is an interesting one. Effectively, this is meant to capture the enthusiast gaming notebook segment firmly again that really, I would say, Intel no longer can claim to have. Alder Lake HX combines the desktop class PCH and CPU dies from Alder Lake S and puts them into a smaller BGA SoC that's meant to bring desktop class performance, true desktop class, 16 cores, to the 45 to 65 watt TDP. I can't promise this will beat everything AMD has, but to me this sounds stronger than Zen 3 Plus Rembrandt with just 8 cores. I would assume that if AMD keeps the enthusiast class mobile performance crown, it's going to be because AMD will launch some multi-chip mobile SoC as well, which I don't have any information on that, but I mean, come on, 8 plus 8, I think that's what AMD is going to have to do if they want to keep it. All right, I wasn't just teasing you by showing the next thing I'm going to talk about is Raptor Lake. Before we get into that, I do think we need to talk about how Alder Lake should do with that rollout plan I just told you about and what AMD's response likely is. So, look, I think one thing's clear. Intel is likely to at least, even if it's very briefly take the gaming performance crown with Alder Lake. I think there's no doubt that AMD is going to do at least an XT refresh, your 5600 XT, your 5800 XT, 5950 XT, followed by some paper launch of a Zen 3D special edition chips at the very end of this year. AMD can do that, but it's not all going to be ready in time, at least not the Zen 3D parts. And so Alder Lake should be the de facto gaming crown, at the end of this year, even if it's just for like a week. But that'll be fun to see. I think real competition returning, even if it's brief. Having said that, though, I think I'm now kind of seeing what's going on possibly with Zen 3D Milan-X. That was that 3D stacked Threadripper that I had to cross out the secret Milan on that board because other people already confirmed it. I think AMD was likely working on Milan-X, a version of Zen 3 Epic with 3D stacking V-Cache on it, as an option to dissuade people from going to Sapphire Rapids. I've already leaked that Sapphire Rapids may go up to actually 72 cores recently, and it's going to have stacked memory, as I confirmed a year ago, or think over a year ago. You know, Sapphire Rapids sounds really impressive, but AMD's Skunkworks 3D stacked Milan-X, I really do think that's just like, hey, you can go to this new Sapphire Rapids platform, or if you have Naples, Zen 1 Epic right now, we got this thing called Milan-X, and it'll fit into your existing socket. And it's going to have 3D stacking tech. It's going to have these insane amounts of cache on die, just like Sapphire Rapids. And you know what? It's going to be out before Sapphire Rapids. It's going to be cheaper. It's going to go up to 64 cores. You don't know if they're going to do 56 or more or anything. You know, just stick with AMD and use Milan-X. I think that's the point of Milan-X. I think, and I don't know that that's the same thing as Trento and the Frontier supercomputer, but this is a separate thing. So that's what the point of Milan-X is. And then at the same time, they're like, let's see how well it works in Ryzen. And I think they found that it works well, like really well. And they said, yeah, it's a good thing we stopped working on Warhol late last year. Again, that was late last year. They canceled Zen 3 Plus on desktop. Not recently, according to some tech tubers. And they said, you know, this is enough. We'll just launch this. We'll launch Milan-X. That should dissuade people from using Sapphire Rapids. And, you know, we'll have some kind of a stopgap if Zen 4 gets delayed. But, you know, with how much of a high margin they're making on Zen 3, they're killing it, guys. These are 70 millimeter squared core chiplets and 12 nanometer IO dies. This thing is, Zen 3 is making AMD buco dolores, okay? I think they can afford to just do a full new lineup, and I think they should. I think they could afford to slot in a 6950X that has V-Cache on it and higher bin dies than what's in the 5950X now. I think they could afford to paper launch that at the end of this year next to a 6900X V-Cache and a 6800X V-Cache, and then rebrand the 5800X as a 6700X for like 330. You know, bring out the 6600X as below 300 if they need to, and have a full new lineup. The top ones with V-Cache and higher bin dies should be a good 10-20% better than what was in the Zen 3 marquee products, and everything should follow nicely down the product stack with some price drops here and there from what their previous SKUs were. I think AMD should do it because Zen 4 is getting pushed back, and what I'm hearing about Raptor Lake is very exciting. And in fact, I do think I should just get into it because you need to see this to understand where I'm coming from here. Raptor Lake is slotted for a holiday 2022 release. Think of this as like Zen 3 after Zen 2. Not exactly a year after Zen 2, but a little over a year. They want to get this out next year. They want this to fight Zen 4. And it will slot into the existing, by then, LGA 1700 socket. You'll be able to upgrade from Alder Lake to Raptor Lake. And so far, it does seem like the architecture for the big cores is called Raptor Cove. I've known about this thing referred to as Raptor Cove Core for months now, but I just assumed it was a placeholder name. I don't think it really is anymore. It could get its own name, but it's an enhanced Golden Cove, not a giant upgrade, so I do think it might just be called Raptor Cove. But it is higher IPC, it is higher frequencies, and it is better performance per watt over Alder Lake. This will be a okay or notable upgrade to what Alder Lake will be, and although it uses the same little core architecture of Gracemont, it supposedly will come with 8 big cores and 16 of those little cores. Basically, once Intel is sure their scheduling on Windows is good, they're doubling core count for the little cores. And it was specifically highlighted as a push for better multi-threading performance. And if you think it stops there, this should give you an idea, right? If you can fit 4 little cores into the same die space as one big core, how many cores do you think Intel is going to put together in some upcoming projects? Yeah, stay tuned for more leaks, guys. There's crazy stuff they're working on. And it does, of course, also come with updated I.O., you know, a newer chipset with higher DDR5 speeds, 5600 megahertz was mentioned. And Intel is, again, positioning this to challenge Zen 4 Raphael. Do you guys now see why I think AMD may want to do a full lineup if they can at the end of this year? And honestly, although it sounds like they've been planning for 16 cores mostly for a while, they may really want to make an IO die version that can support 24 cores because, well, Intel's going to have 24 cores. And although I expect Zen 4 to have higher IPC than Alder Lake, Raptor Lake increases it again. So I think it's going to be pretty close in gaming performance. And with Intel, even if they're little cores, doubling the amount of little cores, I just think AMD's cutting it a little close going with just 16 big cores. No PCIe 5.0. I don't know, guys. To me, it looks like Intel's really waking up here. Although Alder Lake is not some elaborate tiled design, this is just the first step of them moving towards fully disaggregated tiled architectures. The first step is getting Big Little to work in their minds. And so see this as the first step in Raptor Lake as a tick on that first step towards Meteor Lake, the big kahuna. And I'm just going to emphasize this. You know, I just said earlier in the leak that I've known about Raptor Lake Cove for months now. I've known about what's coming after Raptor Lake, what's coming after Meteor Lake, what's coming after Lunar Lake for half a year. And what Intel's working on is nuts, guys. Nuts. But it doesn't stop there. I have some more musings for you. This is a quote from someone at Intel. This fall will be interesting with Zen 3D XT3D versus Alder Lake, and Zen 4 should be hard for us to compete with. But honestly, we are expecting even greater competition from AMD with Zen 5 and 6, although we will also have magnitudes better products by then as well. And I heard this as well. Honestly, Apple scares us much more than AMD at the moment. They aren't sitting still, and we are worried they have far greater ambitions in the semiconductor market than most people are currently assuming. Not to mention they get the latest nodes before AMD. Guys, Apple's on 5 nanometer right now. That's true. And I have been told that Apple's upcoming chip for the Mac Pro is 32 big cores and 8 little cores, massive IPC. And finally, just putting this in because I have to finally say it publicly for fun here. Jensen Huang called Pat Gelsinger about the possibility of using Intel's fabs in the future if an emergency called for it. Yeah, I didn't just put those last few musings for extra hype or whatever. I brought up Apple. I brought up NVIDIA talking directly to Intel because I think people need to understand that NVIDIA, Intel, they're not just going to roll over and let TSMC combine with AMD and crush everyone, or TSMC combine with Apple and crush everyone. NVIDIA isn't going to roll over. If TSMC starts dominating too hard, they're going to see what they can do to team up with Intel and vice versa. It's not just AMD or TSMC, it's also Apple. These companies are preparing for major wars with upcoming architectures and finding allies if one of them gets too powerful. I think people need to understand that. And that kind of leads me back to this. I really, based on what I know about what Intel's coming soon, I really think that AMD should do a full 6000 series lineup at the end of this year. It may not be as profitable. It costs money to launch new products, do a full new stack and sell a 3D stacked chip for $800 or even $1,000. It's new stuff. It's probably expensive. It won't be as profitable as continuing to sell those $800 5950Xs. But Alder Lake is almost certainly going to take the gaming performance crown, at least briefly. AMD should have a full product stack if Zen 4 is not coming out till the end of next year, especially when you consider it's going to have better competition again. It's not just a little tick on Alder Lake. They're increasing core counts, IPC frequencies, IO with Raptor Lake, guys. I think AMD needs to have a full lineup for the whole year before Raptor Lake. And they should really consider launching that 24-core design I know about. I don't know that consumers need it, but who cares? It would almost certainly keep the multi-threading and single-threaded performance crown at the same time, and they could charge $1,200 for it if they wanted to. Who cares? They could do it, and it would be there making sure Intel knows that we're still keeping up with you. And it's funny how I've been kind of speculating, I know some versions of Zen 4 have that V cache on it, but how much of the lineup? I now wonder if they'll put it on most of the lineup because they need to keep the edge, to keep their edge, over Raptor Lake. At least I hope so, because yeah, that's where I'm starting to assume AMD showing off Zen 3D wasn't just a shot across the bow, wasn't just to build up hype while you wait for Zen 4. It was probably there to show shareholders, we know Intel's gonna reveal some crazy things soon. We've got crazy things as well, and that makes me very excited. I guess the last thing that I will say is this. Look, I think Genoa's going to crush Sapphire Rapids by double digits. I think that Alder Lake will be less efficient than Zen 4, maybe even than Zen 3D, and even if it keeps the gaming crown, it'll probably be a slight keeping of it. If not, Zen 3D will almost certainly, retake the crown very quickly. When I say Alder Lake will take the crown briefly, I just mean before Zen 3D launches, after all. I think that a lot of people will make fun of Alder Lake because it's easy to make fun of Intel now. But can you guys see what's happening here? Just a year ago, we had AMD showing off Rome, a single Rome 64 core beating two of Intel's Cascade Lake, Cascade Lake X 28 core Xeons combined. AMD had a chip that was better than two Intel processors put together. That's not true with Ice Lake X already. It's like 50% better, 2 versus 2. 50% better. I mean, think about what I'm saying here. Zen Plus versus Coffee Lake. Zen Plus looked a lot more efficient, but then things got way worse for Intel when they went to Coffee Lake versus Zen 2. And then even more bad when they went to Rocket Lake versus Zen 3. The deficit. Intel's deficit to AMD and just about everything has been falling behind steadily over the past few years. I believe Alder Lake isn't going to catch up. People will still make fun of it because it's less efficient than what AMD has at the time. But Alder Lake is the start of Intel not losing more ground. The start of competition slowly but surely coming back, and then coming back more with Raptor Lake. And then, of course, with Meteor Lake, Lunar Lake, and, well, you have to wait for another video for me to tell you what comes after that stuff. But it's crazy. So, yeah, I mean, make sure you subscribe to the Moore's Law is Dead YouTube channel and ring the bell button so you don't miss all of these leaks from AMD, NVIDIA, and especially Intel over the next few years. And if you have the extra money, consider supporting us on Patreon. There's ad-free exclusive content every week. You get to ask guests, me, and the co-host Dan questions. It pays for me and the co-host and the audio engineer. We couldn't do this without our patrons, so consider supporting us if you've been enjoying our content. And then, as always, thank you for watching.